There is one team left on the schedule that the Stallions have yet to play and therefore have yet to beat, and it's the San Antonio Brahmas. This weekend, the Stallions will face off with them in their final cross-conference matchup, and it's going to be a good game against two of the best teams in this league that are both headed to the postseason. We're going to talk about it on this episode of the State of Stallions and break it down further. This is your host, Luke Miller. Thanks for tuning in.
Here we go. Hey, giddy up on three. 1, 2, 3. Giddy up.
You can feel the buzz when you're around this city. People have fallen in love with the Birmingham Stallions. Here we go. We're getting a little juice going.
USFL championship.
So there's no doubt that this is going to be a great game between two of the very best teams in this league that could possibly see each other again in a couple weeks in the championship if things go right for each of them. But they can't look too far ahead to that stage yet because they've got a big regular season matchup this weekend in week 9 of the UFL season. The Stallions certainly have their hands full, and I think there's a couple things they have to do if they want to win this game. Number one is they have to stop Anthony McFarland and Chase Garbers. Let me talk about McFarland first, who I think is one of the best playmakers in this league. Now, unfortunately, he's been hurt for a large portion of the season and missed several games, but when he's been out there, he's been one of the most dynamic players on the field. This past week in his return against the Arlington Renegades, he racked up 136 total yards and 2 touchdowns. One was a 52-yard catch that wasn't that long of a catch. He made a lot of guys miss and took it to the house. And then the second was a 37-yard catch. So most of his damage actually was through the air, and it was, again, through what he was able to do with his legs once the ball was in his hands. He's a tough player to stop, and the Stallions are going to have their hands full if they want to wrap him up and bring him down. And if they want to keep San Antonio out of the end zone, that's the main guy, I think, that they've got to contain. San Antonio has a lot of other weapons for sure, and definitely guys they're going to have to try and, keep in check. But I think McFarland is the difference maker, and to me, San Antonio looks like a different offense when he's out there on the field. Also, it's very possible that we will see, to some extent, Chase Garbers this Saturday. Chase Garbers was the Brahmas starting quarterback at the beginning of the year when they got off to a very hot start, and unfortunately, he also got hurt and missed several games. And again, in my opinion, it's looked like a different offense not for the better without him out there. And so Quentin Dormady is a good quarterback, but for whatever reason, he has seemed to not fit this scheme as well as he did when he had a lot of success in Orlando in 2023. He had a great first half last week, but then in the second half, things really kind of sputtered out. And again, a lot of the success was what McFarland was able to do with the ball in his hand. So, frankly, Dormady doesn't scare me too much, but I think if Garbers is healthy and if he's back, I think he can be a lot more threatening with what he's able to do in A.J. Smith's offense. So I don't know how much we'll see Garbers, but he is active, and I do think we will see him some. He's probably not going to start the game, but he will take the field at some point. And I think the Stallions, again, if he's out there and if McFarland's out there, then they've got their hands full, and they have to come ready to play. Last week against the Roughnecks, they kind of got a wrinkle thrown in when Nolan Henderson took the field, I think maybe semi-unexpectedly, and they didn't really have a lot of tape on him. They didn't really have a great way to prepare for him, and I felt like they had a really hard time containing his legs and, answering sort of the challenge that he posed to them. I don't think the Stallions can sort of, get caught in that same situation this week. You've got to come ready to see either Dormady or Garbers. You got to know both of their skill sets and what they bring. There's a little more film on each of them, so there's no excuse for not being prepared for them. And you're probably going to see both of them at some point in this game. So I think the first thing the Stallions have to do is keep McFarland in check and be prepared for Chase Garbers if and when he takes the field. The second thing I think the Stallions need to do is win in the trenches. These are two of the best teams when it comes to both protecting the quarterback and applying pressure to the opposing quarterback. Actually, the Stallions at the beginning of the year were highly praised for, how many sacks they were racking up and how dominant they were in terms of their defensive line, and that's continued to be the case. But a lot of teams have schemed for that, and they've come up with a lot of quick passes and other sort of schemes to prevent the Stallions from being able to get as much pressure. So the Stallions actually now are second in the league in sacks, not first any longer. And the team that's first is the Brahmas. The Brahmas have 26 sacks on the season. The Stallions have 25. So it's going to be imperative that the offensive line does as much as possible to protect Adrian Martinez and give him time and give him lanes through which he can escape and run and create if necessary. I thought last week the offensive line played great. There was 0 sacks given up against a very good Houston defense. We kind of were healthy on the offensive line. We had everybody back and out there that we like to see. But 2 weeks ago, I thought it started off pretty rough against St. Louis. We gave up 3 sacks in that game. I felt like Adrian, especially in the first half, was under a lot of pressure. It got better as the game went on, but this is a team again we haven't seen before, a defensive front we haven't seen before, and so I think it's imperative that the offensive line come out and come ready to play. And I know we'll talk about this later, but we're already down one starting offensive lineman in right tackle, Alex Taylor. So I think it's key. The offensive line performance is going to be key in this game. And then on the flip side, as far as continuing discussing the offensive line, but looking at it from the other angle, the Brahmas actually have given up the least sacks this year. So they've only given up 12. And then the Stallions are third and only giving up 14. So again, both teams are very good, both at applying pressure and at protecting the quarterback. So I think, one of the things that the Stallions really need to try to do is win that battle, is give Adrian as much time as possible and apply as much pressure as possible to whether it be Dormandy or Garbers, whoever's in there. I think we'll probably see Dormandy a little bit more unless things kind of go south. And Dormandy isn't as mobile as Garbers or some of the other quarterbacks that the Stallions have faced in this league. Again, I think their offense is, AJ Smith, he's going to have some strategies to get the ball out quick to keep Dormandy from, just sitting back there in the pocket. But when he does drop back and sort of, try to go through his reads or his progressions, I think the Stallions really, as much as possible, need to try and get pressure on against a very good Brahmas offensive line. And then my third key to this game is, the Stallions, they have to come prepared. I mean, let's face it, the Stallions are every team's Super Bowl at this point, right? The Stallions haven't lost a game in over a calendar year. They're on a 15-game win streak dating back to sort of the early middle of USFL season last year. They're 29-3 in 3 seasons. They are the class of this league. They're the best team in this league, and everybody wants to be able to beat them, to be able to say, hey, we were the one team that knocked off the Stallions, or we were the one team that was able to beat the Stallions. We were the team that broke that win streak. And so the Brahmas are going to come into this game hungry with something to prove and to try and knock the Stallions off their pedestal. And everybody's talking about how the Stallions don't have much to play for, right? Like they've secured home field advantage in the playoffs. They're undefeated. There's nothing they really have left to prove. And so it could be easy to walk into the Alamo Dome on Saturday and sort of be lulled to sleep and thinking that this game doesn't really matter too much, or, we don't really sort of need this win as bad as maybe they do. There's some extra motivation that they have that maybe we don't. So you got to come, you got to be prepared, you got to, want it. And the Stallions, 1-0 mantra has sort of been their cry since year one. And, that's going to be tested this week, I think, in terms of their focus and preparation for this game. But hopefully they can continue that sort of, 1-0 mindset, and that culture can sort of prove to be strong enough to motivate them to be at their best performance for this game. So those are my sort of big 3 keys for the game. And now let's talk a little bit about who's going to be out there on the field for the Stallions. There's a lot of discussion about, will the Stallions rest players? Will they sit some starters? I already mentioned, one offensive lineman who's going to be out. So let's talk a little about who's going to be out there on the field for us this weekend in our roster report. So as we normally do, I'll tackle this in 4 parts. First, let me talk about who we signed this week. And we actually signed 2 very familiar names. 1, punter Colby Wadman, and 2, safety JoJo Tillery. And to make room for those guys, we released punter Drew Chrisman and safety Juju Hughes. Basically, kind of my suspicions and what I sort of thought was going on was confirmed this week. And that was that both Colby and JoJo had injuries that were serious enough to keep them out for a few weeks, but not quite serious enough to require putting them on IR. The issue with that is, in this league with limited roster sizes, you just can't afford to have multiple key guys just sort of sitting on your roster as inactives. And so what the Stallions chose to do, which is a little risky, but what they chose to do was to release these guys, let them heal up over a couple weeks, and then once they were ready to go, bring them back in to the team. So those guys are back on the roster. Drew Chrisman and Juju Hughes, who were signed sort of while those guys were out to kind of fill in for them, have been released. And the Stallions are kind of getting back to sort of more what the roster looked like a couple weeks ago when they were at full strength and they were healthy. So while I hate to see Drew and Juju leave, I'm really thankful for them and the way they stepped in and helped us over the last couple of weeks, and excited for them to be able to get some tape and hopefully get some other opportunities either in this league or in the NFL. It's also great to have Colby and JoJo back, especially down the stretch here. As far as the IR, remains the same. The one kind of, I think, that needs revisited is Deontay Brown. He's been out now for several weeks, been on the IR since after week 1. So it's been 7 or 8 weeks now. So I don't know if he's going to be back this year. It might be a serious enough injury that he's just going to miss all year, or maybe there's hope that he could be back maybe for the postseason. But he's still out. The other guys, it hasn't quite been long enough for them to come off IR yet. Again, I don't think we should expect Scooby Wright back this year regardless. But Chris Blewett and Chris Jackson, I think it's very possible that in the next week or two, we could get them back, maybe especially for that postseason push, which Chris Blewett will be a really interesting one because it'll be interesting to see if they treat it similarly to how they did the punter spot, where do they release Ramiz Ahmed and bring Chris Blewett in, even if he's missed, 5 or 6 weeks from injury, or do they stick with Ahmed? My hunch is that they probably would bring Blewett back in if he's healthy and ready to go, especially again for that postseason push. But that remains to be seen. As far as who's inactive this week, it's mostly, again, what you would expect. Jamar Smith, again, as that quarterback 3, is inactive. Larry Roundtree will be out. Isaiah Zuber also will be out. Both of those guys had big turnovers in the last 2 weeks. So I'm not sure as we get down to kind of these clutch games here late in the season and the postseason if we'll be seeing them, assuming everybody stays healthy. But we'll have to see about that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Alex Taylor is also going to be out. I think he had a little bit of an injury earlier this week. Probably could have played, but didn't want to probably risk it and wanted to make sure we have him when we really need him in a couple weeks. And then on the defensive side, DeMarcus Mitchell will be out. And then Elijah Sullivan, who, similar to, I think, Alex Taylor, had like a little minor injury, just want to get him out and get him healthy, will be out. And then Mark Gilbert is also out again. And then JoJo, I think, sounds like maybe needs another just week or two to kind of get to 100%. And so he'll be inactive this week, but hopefully back soon. So let's take a look then at the Stallions depth chart heading into this weekend. So as far as the offense, it's really, again, about what you would expect. Again, Alex Taylor will be out, and so Matt Caskey is going to fill in at right tackle. But really, other than that, it's pretty much what it's been for the last several weeks. So no sign of resting offensive starters. Adrian Martinez still at quarterback. Ricky Person still at running back. Got our main starting receivers that have kind of locked in those starting roles in Amari, Dion, and Kevin Austin. So, nothing changing there. And then on the defensive side, it's, again, pretty similar to what it has been for the last few weeks. I mean, Carlos Davis is back. He was out last week, so he's starting again at defensive tackle. And then, again, like I said, Elijah Sullivan's out, so Malik Hall's backing up DeMarcus Gates at that linebacker spot. And then as far as the corners and safeties and things, it's again pretty much the same as it has been, with Daniel Isom at nickel, and then Neville Clark and Madre Harper at corners, and Kenny Robinson and A.G. Thomas at safety. So if there was any, thought that maybe the Stallions might rest some guys or sit some guys this week, certainly does not appear to be the case. We've got our normal kind of starting guys for the most part. And on special teams, again, same sort of thing. Colby Wadman is back at punter. Ramiz Ahmed is kicking. And then we'll have Gary Jennings returning kicks and Amari Rogers returning punts. So no real major changes on the depth chart. I think it's sort of full speed ahead for the Stallions, and they certainly want to get another win, beat the only team they haven't beaten yet in this league, and continue their undefeated season as they approach the end of the regular season. So with that being said, let's now turn to the Roundup, where we cover all the latest UFL and Stallions news from across the league. Okay, so first thing, just as a reminder, there will be a watch party at Back 40 this Saturday at 2 p.m. for the game. So if you can't make the trip out to Texas, definitely pull up for that. Saturday night after the game, I'm actually going to be on the Talkin' Bama show on YouTube at 8:30. So that's a podcast about Alabama, but I'm going to be on there talking about the Birmingham Stallions and kind of their final couple games of the regular season and the postseason. So definitely tune into that if you're an Alabama fan, or if you're just a Stallions fan, tune into the segment where I'll be on talking about the team and a couple of the Alabama players that have been on the team in years past and this year. Definitely should be a great time with those guys. The final regular season home game will be next Saturday, June 1st at 1 p.m. So we definitely want to pack out protective for that final home game of the year. The time got flexed, so it was a little scheduled to be a little bit earlier, around 11, but now it's been pushed to 1. So make sure you make note of that. But definitely come out for that. Would love to show the guys some support and love as we sort of wrap up the regular season, and make sure you get your tickets for that. Also, just so you know, the night before that, so Friday, May 31st, the team will be in town, and there's going to be a youth football camp at Protective Stadium from 5:20 to 6:30 p.m. Check-in will begin for that at 4:30 p.m. It's for any kids ages 5 to 13. Like I said, it will take place at Protective. You can register for it online if you go to the Stallions, any of the Stallions social media pages. They posted about it, and I'll try and include a link in the show notes as well. And so you can register for the camp. And if you are a Stallion season ticket member, or if you have tickets to that Saturday, June 1st game, then the camp will be free. So it's a great deal. It's going to be a great time. Definitely, if you know any kids in the area that are sort of elementary or middle school age, let them know about this camp. And would be awesome to have a ton of kids out there at Protective connecting with this team. And then again, especially coming out on Saturday to support them as well as they give back to our city. So make sure you let anybody who might be interested in that know about that. The following week, the USFL Conference Championship will take place, and it is confirmed that game will be in Birmingham, sort of no matter what happens over the next couple of weeks. So Saturday, June 8th at 2 p.m., pack Protective for the USFL Conference Championship against the Michigan Panthers. We need everyone there for that game. Tickets are on sale now, so make sure you go ahead and secure those. And again, let's have the biggest crowd yet as we welcome the boys home for a postseason game as they prepare to hopefully make a run for the championship. Speaking of the championship, tickets are now on sale for the championship in St. Louis. The championship will take place Sunday, June 16th at 4 p.m. Central. Obviously, you might not want to buy tickets yet until you know for sure if the Stallions are going to be in it. But if you're interested in going regardless, or if you feel really confident about us making it, then you can go ahead and secure your tickets. I have secured mine. Would love to see you there. Again, especially if the Stallions make it to that game. It's not a terrible drive from Birmingham to St. Louis, so it'd be great for us to show out and represent the team again, especially assuming we make it to that point. Of course, don't want to jump the gun, but hopefully we will be there and be able to support the team there. Speaking of the championship, the USFL, or excuse me, UFL trophy, championship trophy, is out now. So I'll include a picture of it on here. You can see what you think if you haven't seen it yet. I have my thoughts, but I'll withhold those. I'll let you sort of make your own judgments about what you think of the trophy, but it is out now. As far as attendance for last week, it was actually really solid. It was actually the second best attendance of any week out of the season. There was only one week that was a little bit better, and it was back when, the Battlehawks had over 40,000 fans at one of their games. So the Birmingham had just over 10,000, which all things considered, I thought was actually a really great number. I was kind of expecting the worst because we were coming off that highly attended game against St. Louis and a game against Houston that is only won one game, and there wasn't a lot of hype going into it. The weather was looking terrible for the game. So just given all those factors, I didn't have super high hopes for the turnout, but we actually had over 10,000, which again, like I said, considering the circumstances, I thought was great. And it helped, propel the league to the second best attendance of the season thus far in terms of weekly attendance, because we had over 10,000. San Antonio also had, I think, just over 10 or 11,000. And then St. Louis, did what they do and had over 30,000. So that was great to see. Unfortunately, on the flip side, while the attendance was an improvement, the TV ratings kind of fell off. So we had the worst TV ratings of the season thus far. The Stallions game was on ESPN2 and sort of, barely pulled 250,000 people. So that was unfortunate to see. Again, understandable why it maybe wasn't great, but still not a super positive sign for the league. Some of the other broadcast games didn't do quite as well as they have. Unfortunately, it might get worse before it gets better because the postseason is already decided at this point. These final couple games of the regular season, there's not a lot of compelling matchups and there's not a lot at stake. And so for maybe more casual fans, I'm not sure how many people are going to be tuning in. Um, you know, there was only 643,000 people on average that tuned in to the games this past weekend. Hopefully, with some broadcast channels and things over the next couple of weeks, that number will go up, maybe a little bit. But again, I wouldn't expect amazing numbers. The hope, I think, at this point is that once we hit the postseason and the championship, those numbers really, hopefully, skyrocket. So we'll see what happens from there. As far as power rankings, I mean, I think at this point, again, as I just mentioned, the postseason is already sort of decided as far as what teams are going to be there. There's a very clear sort of tier 1 and tier 2 in this league. I think Stallions are still on top. I would probably put Battlehawks second. I'd probably put the Panthers third right now, and then the Brahmas fourth, just because, again, Garbers is not 100% yet. I think once Garbers is, and with McFarland back, it's very possible that I would maybe bump San Antonio up into that 3 spot. But I like what Michigan is doing. I really like Bryce Perkins a lot. I think they've got a great team and a great defense. So for now, while Garbers isn't fully healthy, I'm going to give them the nod. And then in sort of the lower tier of the league, you've got DC, Arlington, Houston, and then I think Memphis is still the worst team in the league right now. So for my predictions for week 9, I'm going to go with the away teams in every game. I'm going to take the Battlehawks on the road over Arlington. They need a win because they want to try and get home field advantage for the playoffs. And the Renegades have been close to winning a lot of games, but I don't think they can beat St. Louis, assuming St. Louis shows up to play. I'm going to take the Stallions over the Brahmas on the road as well. Again, until the Stallions lose, I have no reason to stop picking them. I'm going to take the Panthers over the Roughnecks, also on the road down there in Houston. I think Houston's pretty dejected and their morale's pretty low. They gave it everything they got in that game against us last week and weren't able to pull it out. So I think Michigan goes down there and takes care of business. And then I'm going to take DC on the road over Memphis. Memphis has just completely fallen apart and is, I think, the biggest disappointment in the league this year. They've been terrible. And, DC doesn't have a lot left to play for other than their own sort of pride. But I think they might be able to go down there to Memphis and sort of take out a lot of anger on the Showboats. So those are my picks for the week. So that's going to do it for this week's show, folks. Thank you again for tuning in. Got to shout out Alabama Peanut Company. I got the hat on and the shirt on. They're not sponsoring me, but if they want to, bring it on. Love Alabama Peanut Company, one of my favorite places in Birmingham. Definitely check it out. Get some boiled peanuts if you haven't yet, or if you do, pay them a visit. Let them know I sent you, and let them know they should sponsor me. And also, I got to shout out my guy Logan Graffia. Logan got me this Birmingham Bolts hat. He thrifted this thing in Louisiana, and it's still got the original XFL tag on it, which is crazy. He picked this thing up for like $2. It's got the XFL tag on the inside. This is a OG 2001 Thunderbolts hat. I really like it because it's got this Birmingham Thunderbolts written on the bill, which is super cool. So I thought about wearing it for the show, but it's more of a collectible to me than something to wear. So I'm really excited to have another sort of piece to add to the collection here and have that be on the show each week. So shout out to Logan, awesome guy. Thanks for doing that, man. And shout out to you all. Thank you all for listening and tuning in. Not everybody agrees, but I think you're the best fans in the UFL. You showed it last week with the shirtless pyramid. Can't wait to see more of that next week when we take on Michigan at home. And then in the playoffs, we're going to get that end zone rocking with a lot of shirtless dudes, and it's going to be a crazy atmosphere, and Michigan's not going to know what hit them. So thanks for tuning in. Love the Stallions. Love y'all. Giddy up.